What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2023 schedule preview projected record series. The Arkansas Razorbacks are up next. Before we get to 2023, let's look back at 2022. Here was the schedule from 2022, and you can see a 7-6 record for Arkansas, 6-6 in the regular season. Got off to a great start with Cincinnati, South Carolina, Missouri State. 3-0. Looked pretty good, and even in the Texas A&M game, looked like they were going to win that game early on. Then the one play really flipped that game, and had a rough stretch there with Texas A&M, Alabama, Mississippi State. Then they bounced back with road wins over BYU and Auburn before losing to Liberty. That was a really tough loss there. Also losing to LSU in an ugly, low-scoring game. Beat Ole Miss, finished off with a loss at Missouri. So kind of an up-and-down year for Arkansas. They played Cincinnati and BYU in the non-conference. Not Power 5 teams, but still quality opponents. They were able to win both of those games. And then you look at who they played out of the East last year. Of course, they played Missouri every year. So they played them at the end of the season like they always do. And then also they played South Carolina early in the year. Remember, they looked really good in that game. It's funny how you look back at that game, that Arkansas-South Carolina matchup, and then look at where those teams finished. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. But let's look ahead to 2023 now. And these are the games that they'll play outside of the division. They'll play Western Carolina, Kent State, BYU, and Florida Atlantic University. Those will be the non-conference games. So not a very tough, that's just not a tough non-conference schedule at all. BYU could potentially be a somewhat challenging game. Remember, they took care of business in that game last year, and this time it's at home. So you feel pretty good about that non-conference schedule if you're an Arkansas fan. And then you look at their opponents out of the East. Of course, they play Missouri every year, and then they also play Florida. Florida's a team that may finish, in the bottom half of the East again. So that's actually a pretty good schedule. Their games outside of the division, very winnable games. They have a chance to go 6-0 in these games. And so if they can do that, they're already to a bowl game before even having to play, before you even look into the division games. Of course, SEC West is going to be very, very tough. But very nice schedule here outside of the division. Let's look at all of the schedule, go week by week now. They open up with Western Carolina, and then they'll play Kent State and then BYU. So instead of playing BYU kind of later in the year, they'll play them early on, and you've got 3 non-conference games there to get things started. Also, they play LSU early. They play them September 23rd. That's a much different spot on the schedule. We're used to that game being late in the year. Of course, it used to always be on the Friday after Thanksgiving before Missouri came to the SEC. So that'll be interesting seeing that game in September. Kind of strange. They'll play Texas A&M after that on September the 30th. And then I'll tell you what were they doing when they put the schedule together as far as the home and aways? They've got 4 straight SEC games away from home because they'll play Ole Miss on the road and then Alabama on the road. I don't know what they were thinking with these games. Why would you put Arkansas in that situation? 4 straight conference games away from home. And I realize Texas A&M is technically their home game. You've got LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Florida. So you've got 4 true road games, which means Texas A&M is technically their home game. They've only got 3 SEC home games because, again, that game neutral site. But that's I don't understand that one. I don't know what the SEC was trying to do there to Arkansas, but LSU, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, 4 very tough opponents, all in the division, all away from home, all in a row. That's very tough. They'll play Mississippi State after that. That is a home game. Then they get a bye week before going on the road yet again. This time they'll play at Florida. They do finish off with 3 home games. They get Auburn on November the 11th, FIU on the 18th, and Missouri. That will probably be the 24th. The schedules always say that game is on Saturday, and then it gets changed later. I don't know if they've agreed to a Friday game, or I don't know why they do it that way, but that game has been on Fridays for the last several years. So I'm expecting that to be the case. But again, this is just a weird schedule with how they put the home and away games on here. I just don't understand it. You've got the 4 4 straight games away from home, 5 out of 6, and then they finish with 3 home games. So you start with 3 home games, you finish with 3 home games. And you go back to last year, they had all those kind of spurts where they'd win 3, lose 3 in a row. The schedule's kind of setting up to possibly put them in that situation again this year. Overall, not a horrible schedule. Again, your draw is out of the East, not all that bad. Non-conference schedule is not bad, but just the way the games are lined up, this is not good, I think, for Arkansas, with especially that stretch from LSU to Florida, no bye week, 5 out of 6 games away from home. That's going to be very tough right there in the middle of the season. But again, overall, not a bad schedule, just a bad setup with the schedule for Arkansas in 2023. Here were some of the projections from last season. This team went 6-6 in the regular season. Our projection had them at 7-5. I was actually a little bit higher on Arkansas. I had them at 8-4. The FBI had them at 6.5 and 5.5. The over/under was at 6.5. So really, this team underperformed last season. It seemed like they were more along the lines of a 7-5 type team, and they wound up, again, under the over/under, under the FBI, under our projection as well, going just 6-6. So let's see what the projection looks like for 2023. Again, here is the schedule. This is the scale that we'll be using. If it's a 50-50 game, it'll stay in the white. Those are games that we could really see going either way. Games where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown. Less than 20, over 80. Those are games where I think the spread will be 20 or more. 20-29, 71-80. Those are games where I think the spread will be double digits, 10-19 points. 30-39, 61-70. Those are games where I think the spread will be around a touchdown, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 points in that range. So we'll start with the easy wins. They've actually got 3 pretty easy games on the schedule: Western Carolina, Kent State, and FIU. So you've got 3 wins that you can pretty much count on. I wouldn't say they're guaranteed wins, but close to it, especially Western Carolina. That one's probably at like 99 point something percent. Kent State, FIU might be closer to 95%, but again, the Arkansas will be favored by 20 plus points in all 3 of these games. So you count those as wins, and then you look at the games where another game I think they'll be favored in. Clearly, that's BYU. They went on the road, won that game easily last year, and I started to put this one in the blue, but Arkansas, they've got some question marks. They had some guys leave in the transfer portal. Defensively, had some struggles last season, so it's hard to really project where this Arkansas team is going to be. They have potential to be pretty good, but they also have potential to be pretty average. And again, that's mostly because of their defense. So, I don't think the spread will be double digits in that game. Probably 8 or 9 points would be my guess. If you did put that one in the blue, which I considered, then that would not change the projection. That would not change the projection. I'll explain why in just a minute. So how about the games where they're going to be underdogs? I think you got LSU and Alabama. They will probably be double-digit underdogs in both of these games. Boy, having both LSU and Alabama on the road, that is tough. And then Texas A&M, of course, playing them away from home. Ole Miss away from home. You potentially are playing the 4 best teams in the West away from home. So that's really difficult for Arkansas this year. But yeah, Alabama, LSU, I think they're clearly in that top tier. And playing them on the road, that's going to drop that all the way down into the orange. So a double-digit spread, I think, in both of those games. Probably around 14 to 17 points would be my guess. Probably closer to 17 for Alabama, maybe 13 or 14 for LSU. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. I mean, they've got a bunch of 50-50 games. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, Missouri. I don't see a big spread in any of these games. I think the spread will be less than a touchdown in all of these games. But, by the time we get to the games and, Ole Miss, maybe they're rolling. Maybe Florida's playing pretty good. That game's on the road. You could see some of these spreads being 6 or 7 points. But some could maybe even flip towards Arkansas by 6 or 7 points. Auburn, if they don't pan out this year, Mississippi State, if they have a letdown, you could see, again, some of these games could go either way. But I think the best way to just do this projection would be to throw them all in there at 50-50. If I was going to guess, I think Arkansas would be underdogs against Texas A&M, Ole Miss. And Florida's a tough one because it's on the road. But I think Arkansas maybe would be a slight favorite in that game. At home, Mississippi State, Auburn, Missouri, I think they would be favored in those games as well. They've got a pretty nice schedule there down the stretch. After Alabama, it's not too tough. But again, I think there are too many question marks with Arkansas, with Auburn, with Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. It's so early that it's tough to really get a gauge on some of these matchups. So we're just going to put them all in the white in that 50-50 category and say that, really these games all could go either way. So when you do the math here, we count the green games as wins. LSU and Alabama are considered losses. We average everything else out. So BYU's at 65%. All these games in the white are at 50%. When you do that, you get 7-5. So that's the projection here. I talked about BYU. If you counted that as a win, that would not change the projection because they were closer to 6-6 than they were to 8-4. The wins were like 6.6 or 6.7. I can't remember the exact number. So if you bump BYU up into the blue and count it as a win, they would still be 7-5. It would raise that number. It'd probably be 7 point something, but it would still be 7-5. So if in case you were wondering, if you want to throw BYU in the blue, that's fine. If you want to really try to dissect some of these games, again, if you want to put Ole Miss and Texas A&M in the yellow, then I think you would probably maybe want to put Mississippi State, Auburn, Missouri, a couple of those games in the purple. So like I say, this is a very early rough projection. Not any kind of prediction or anything like that. And just based off of this schedule, Arkansas projected to go 7-5 in 2023.